Deputy National Police Commissioner Bonang Mgwenya faces a fall from grace should the court find her guilty. Prosecutors say they have a case that she has abused her position. The background to this, Mgwenya is accused of fraud, money laundering, corruption and theft, totaling about 200 million rand. These are serious charges, and she's just one of 15 police officers facing charges like this. So we need to ask how things can go so awry in the police service. I want to talk now to Andrew Faull, a researcher from the Institute for Security Studies. Andrew, good afternoon to you. What environment, I wonder, allows or exists that allows for corruption of such a mammoth scale to exist within the SAPS? What is systemically wrong?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. So firstly, I think the arrest of General Mgwenya is positive. Of course, we need to wait and see what the courts find, but it is very important that both senior police officials and the most junior are held accountable for any transgressions. In terms of the environment that allows for corruption and abuse of power within the South African Police Service, I think there are many factors that inform this. We recently published a book on integrity in the South African Police Service, which included a survey of almost 900 police officials, where we asked them whether they thought various infractions would be reported by their colleagues, whether they would report them, and what kind of discipline would be expected. And what that survey suggested is that there is quite a powerful code of silence in the SAP. So apart from other factors, most police officials wouldn't report serious misconduct, even if they knew about it. We also found that
go ahead, yeah.
Most officials didn't expect very harsh discipline. So even though half of our scenarios required dismissal within the SAPs, most police officials thought that people would be dismissed if found guilty for only one or two of those. So there seems to be a sense that one won't be held accountable in the organization.
Andrew, is it a stretch to say that there is a culture of impunity? Is it just a few bad apples, albeit bad apples that are responsible for the abuse of a lot of money? What's the scale of all of this, do you think?
Well, it's not just about abuse of money. I suppose it's abuse of power. So policing all over the world is a very discretionary occupation. One has lots of discretionary power, and one operates in an environment without direct accountability. In terms of General Mgwenya's arrest, she is accused of abusing her power in terms of finances. I wouldn't say it's a culture of impunity, but it also isn't about bad apples. It's something in between. So we know that in terms of organizational corruption and integrity, there has to be an environment that allows for the abuse of power. And as I say, our survey and numerous other studies have found that police are unlikely to report one another's transgressions. And if you don't have any internal accountability, then people will abuse their power when they want to. That doesn't mean that everybody is abusing their power, of course, but I think it is very easy for those who want to take advantage of the occupation to do so.
This code of silence, or this omerta, as it's sometimes called, how tight is that, and how difficult would it be to break?
I think that with the right leadership, this kind of culture could be turned around quite quickly. So the National Development Plan calls for a police board to review the competencies and the integrity of all 250-odd generals in the South African Police Service, to check that the right people are in the right place. And I think that if that happened, we would find that there are some excellent leaders in the SAPs, but there are also many who shouldn't be there. Many of those may have been recruited during General Mgwenya's service. And I think that if we put the right people in the right place, they could, with the right leadership, clamp down on this culture of potential impunity. And as I say, it's about people not being held accountable, people knowing that they can do things without their colleagues reporting. And it does seem quite entrenched. So our survey suggested that many people said they would report things, but when we asked them if most of their colleagues would report misconduct, they thought that up to 90% wouldn't report even the most serious misconduct. And that's obviously more important because we all look at ourselves favorably, but it's easier to judge our colleagues.
It's very problematic. It's almost impossible to change that, whether it's the South African Police Service or any other organization. Would this need a change of protocol? What would unlock that logjam, do you think?
I don't think it's just protocol. I think the SAPS has the right structures on paper. It has the right systems in place. It's about using them and making sure that they are put to practice. So if one looks at the disciplinary processes and figures in the South African Police Service, only about 1% of officials are put through formal disciplinary processes each year, and half of those will have their cases dismissed or find no sanction. So there's very little chance of being held accountable, even though we have widespread perceptions of corruption and abuse and a lack of trust amongst the population. And if one looks at the details of those who are being found guilty, it's often for not listening to a commander or not following an instruction or being absent from work without reason. So not things linked to abuse of power, rather linked to internal functioning. And so what we need is a system that allows for all the complaints and the abuses that we know many people in the public are experiencing. We need those to be acted upon. We need people to be held accountable for those. So as I say, it's about having the leaders who are willing to put the systems that are already in place to work so that people are held accountable internally.
And that surely is predicated on better recruitment.
It's not just recruitment. I think it's too easy to criticize the fact that, quote unquote, the SAPS will hire anybody. The reality is that we live in an environment where we have amongst the highest unemployment in the world, perhaps the highest. And although there are lots of very good applicants applying to the South African Police Service, it's almost impossible to sift through 500,000 applications for 3,000 posts. So I think the SAPS probably does its best to recruit the right people, but they are just flooded by nature of the environment, by virtue of the environment. I also think that you can have very optimistic people entering the South African Police Service and very qualified people, but once you find yourself in a culture where you see people taking advantage and not being held accountable, it's easy to lose motivation and be sucked into that culture of not reporting one's colleagues, because you don't want to get mixed up with the wrong crowd, you don't want to get in trouble, and you realize that this job could potentially be something that serves you for life and helps you support your community and your precarious unemployed siblings and family. And in that sense, there's a tension between the economic precarity of the South African environment and one's ability to stand up to abuse of power in the organization.
Andrew Faull, thank you very much indeed.